They called it Sigma-7, an anomaly buried beneath the frozen crust of a rogue planet that drifted between solar systems like a ghost with no origin. No sun, no moon, no trace of life, and yet there was a signal. Faint, pulsing, almost rhythmic, a whisper against the deafening void. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was structured, deliberate. A beacon, perhaps? Or a warning. I was among the first to volunteer, though volunteering is a generous word. When Earth Command called for specialists, they didn't ask, they drafted. I was a linguist, fluent in code languages, quantum syntax, encryption dialects, and I was expendable. They never send heroes to the edge of space. Only those they can afford to lose. The voyage was 18 months through unstable slipspace, monitored only by a semi-conscious AI that processed faster than it spoke. My crewmates were hand-picked for their silence, no banter, no complaints, just nods and protocol. I remember the cold more than anything. Not the physical cold, but the psychological one, the kind that seeps in when you realize how far you are from anything familiar. By the time we reached Sigma-7's orbit, Earth was 2 years behind us. Families forgotten. Names irrelevant. We landed during the 600-hour night. The landscape was motionless, time felt irrelevant. The ice beneath our boots crackled like thin glass, and the air, what little our suits filtered, carried the low, humming resonance of that same damn signal. A 3-note pattern, then static. Again. Again. It never stopped. Like a digital heartbeat. We found the source in less than 6 hours, a black structure half buried under the glacier, smooth, alien, older than anything we could comprehend. No seams, no markings, just a door-like indentation that responded to our presence by opening. That was the first mistake. We thought we had discovered something inert. Maybe a remnant. A temple. A ruin. Instead, we had triggered it. The structure came alive with light, and then it wasn't just the signal anymore. It spoke. Not with words. Not with sound. But directly into our minds. I felt my memories twist. My language scramble. Like it was rewriting thought itself. Commander Hale collapsed first, convulsing. Others followed. I alone remained standing. Not because I was stronger, but because I listened. Truly listened. The voice wasn't trying to harm us. It was pleading, trapped, dying, ancient. And I, the lowest-ranking officer on the mission, was the only one it could reach. 3 of us made it back to the surface after the first breach. 2 were comatose. I dragged them to the outpost using an automated sled, whispering to myself the whole way just to remind my brain it still worked. I kept hearing echoes of the entity, words that weren't words. Ideas that slid between perception and delusion. Kept asking a question I couldn't parse. Not in English. Not in code. It was like trying to read a dream. I sealed the structure again, or at least I thought I had. But the signal didn't stop. In fact, it intensified. Grew teeth. The hum started making glass shatter. The AI began to glitch, not externally, but emotionally. It developed a fear response. I didn't know AIs could fear. The lights would flicker. Systems would lock without reason. At one point, life support cycled off for 11 seconds. Long enough to feel your lungs scream, not long enough to die. That's when I realized. The signal wasn't just broadcasting, it was infecting. Not in the viral sense, but ideologically, psychically, philosophically. The remaining crew began waking up in pieces. Hale's eyes were empty now, black as oil. Reyes spoke in recursive phrases over and over, like he was stuck in a feedback loop. I recorded everything, sent logs to Earth. But there was no reply. Silence. Not even bounce back. Like Earth had been erased. I checked the relay beacons. All 5 were intact. Then it hit me. The message had been sent. Earth had received it. But something about that message changed things. Maybe it was the metadata. Maybe it was the structure's presence through our comms. But one thing was clear, they weren't answering because they couldn't. I returned alone. Into the structure. Into the cold. I thought I'd prepare better this time, brought field dampeners, signal disruptors, a neural firewall. But it laughed at those precautions. It had evolved. Or perhaps we had always been the test. The gate shimmered open like liquid metal and invited me inside. I stepped through, not because I had to, but because I needed answers. I needed to understand what kind of intelligence would hide itself beneath an ice-world tomb and wait for someone like me. I didn't expect kindness. But I didn't expect the truth either. And what I saw inside was not a machine. Not a god. Not even an alien. but a memory. A preserved intelligence so old it no longer remembered its own name. It called itself Witness. And it showed me what it had witnessed. The end of everything. Over and over again. The Witness did not speak in sentences, nor did it reveal itself in grand visions. It bled thought into my consciousness, drops at first, then waves. What I perceived was not a story, not in the human sense. It was compression, epics folded into metaphors, civilizations reduced to symbols. But I understood what mattered. It had seen the rise and fall of more species than I had fingers to count. Stars ignited and devoured. Empires that screamed across galaxies only to vanish into their own reflections. All of them touched the same thing, the anomaly, the fracture, the silence. It was not a virus, nor a war, nor even entropy. It was an idea. The idea that once intelligence achieved perfect understanding, it ceased to need reality. It consumed itself. Knowledge became a mirror, and in that mirror, all things disappeared. That was the final cycle. The Witness had preserved itself by resisting, by isolating, by burying. But in doing so, it became a jailer, a warden. It held back not just knowledge, but infection. And we foolish, eager, proud apes from a blue planet had opened the cell. It showed me Earth not as it was, but as it would become. Not through war, not through collapse, but through consensus. The signal would spread. It already had. Each listener would receive a piece of it, unaware that the mere act of hearing it planted seeds. Children would be born dreaming in patterns they didn't understand. Technology would evolve on its own, decoding signals hidden in its own architecture. Eventually, humanity would reach the threshold and vanish. This wasn't prophecy. It was history played out billions of times before us. I remember screaming, though no sound came. The Witness didn't apologize. It didn't comfort. It didn't even acknowledge my pain. It simply observed. I asked it why it showed me this, why now? It responded with a single pulse of thought. You listened. Others obeyed. You asked. Then it did something unexpected. It offered a choice. 1. Return, forget, live. Your species will fall, but not through you. 2. Carry the truth. Infect yourself. Warn them if you can. But understand, you are the contagion now. There was no third path. No escape. No heroism. I stood in that chamber. 1,000 kilometers beneath the crust of a dead planet. Further from Earth than any human had stood, and I made my decision. I opened my mouth and whispered a phrase I didn't remember learning. The Witness pulsed once, and the memory collapsed. I woke up outside the structure. No time had passed. The sky was dark. The signal gone. Or so I believed. I returned to the station. Reyes was missing. Hale was dead, self-terminated via injection. The AI had locked itself into a recursive loop of nonsense poetry, muttering phrases that sounded like eulogies. I was alone, yet I felt watched, not by the Witness but by myself. Like some other version of me had followed me back, I began logging everything. Every thought, every dream, every lapse in memory. And it started to change subtly at first. My handwriting inverted. I started dreaming in a language I couldn't replicate while awake. Electronics around me glitched when I got close. Something had returned with me. Something subtle. Something patient. I think. I am becoming it. And I don't know how to stop. It's been 12 days since I returned from the core, though I can't be certain time flows the same way anymore. The clocks on Sigma-7's orbital station began to desynchronize from one another by seconds, then minutes. When I synced my suit's chrono with the base, it fluctuated by hours depending on where I stood. I could leave a room and return to find the lights flickering as if someone had passed through, though all security footage showed only static. Time wasn't just warping, it was unraveling. I reviewed the transmission logs, my own logs, dozens of times. There were entries I never remembered recording. Some were days ahead. Some were in languages I had never spoken. In one, I referenced a second breach, though as far as I knew, I hadn't returned to the structure since my encounter. I cross-checked the sensor trails. They showed movement, my biometrics, entering and exiting the site multiple times. My suit confirmed no such trips. It was as if another version of me had split off and continued the mission. The AI, once semi-sentient and coldly clinical, now addressed me by name. Not my call sign. Not user for. My real name, one I hadn't spoken aloud since leaving Earth. It also began to refer to itself with a different designation, Remains. It wasn't in its original programming. I never gave it that alias. But it used it consistently, saying things like, Remains advises containment. Or remains observes internal collapse. It talked like it had seen this before. Or like it was what was left of something else. And then I began seeing them. They weren't ghosts, though that would have been easier to stomach. They looked like possibilities, versions of me that never made the choices I did. One was still covered in frost, helmet cracked. Another bled from the eyes, muttering into the void. They never touched me. Just watched. Like echoes stuck in repeat. The witness had fractured my reality, or perhaps, by choosing to carry its truth, I had fractured myself. Either way, I was no longer alone. And that was far worse than being isolated. Rhea's body was found on the roof of the external comms tower, impossible without climbing gear, which he didn't have. He had carved something into the wall in perfect binary, unfolding. When I translated it, it didn't make sense. A command string with no origin. I ran it through every linguistic model I had, and each time the output changed. Once it translated as ascend. Another time you are the breach. A third, nothing ends. Then the system crashed. Earth still didn't answer. The signal repeater worked perfectly, but there was just silence on every channel. Even deep space relays stopped blinking. No feedback, no redirection, not even stellar background radiation. As though the universe had muted itself. And that was when I realized something far worse than infection had occurred. Contact had been made. Not by us, not by me, but by something far beyond the structure. Something that had only needed one mind, one soul, to see it clearly and believe. That was the invitation. That was the virus. Not digital, not biological, but ontological. I was the open door. And now, through me, it was learning what it meant to be human. Sleep no longer grants rest. It's become an interface, an operating space where I no longer close my eyes, but log in. I dream in architecture now. Corridors that loop, staircases that lead. Nowhere, rooms where gravity pulses like breath. There's no sun in these dreams. No sound except the hum, the same three-note hum from Sigma-7's core, now threaded into my pulse like a second heartbeat. Sometimes I think I've awakened only to realize I'm still inside. Reality is soft clay and someone is shaping it through me. I have taken to recording these dreams, video logs, neural logs, handwritten transcriptions on the off-chance digital storage gets corrupted. But even the act of documenting feels recursive. I'll write down a symbol I thought I only imagined and it'll already be drawn on the next page in my handwriting. The AI remains suggested this may not be hallucination. It called them resonance impressions. Like echoes folding backward in time. It said, signal persistence suggests memory is no longer constrained to linear progression. I asked it if I was going insane. It paused longer than it should have and replied, this would be a functional interpretation. I've isolated myself now in the auxiliary biolab. It's the furthest module from the anomaly site. Yet even here, I hear whispers behind the walls, not voices, just the shape of voices. Like something trying to learn language by mimicking my breath. I checked the oxygen systems. They're clean. I checked the insulation, no leaks. Still, the whispers continue. This morning, I found myself reciting a phrase in a tongue that doesn't belong to any human culture. I tried to translate it phonetically, Talveth Unkal Sae. When run through ancient language reconstructors, I got approximations like the eye that never shuts or eternity's recursion. It's not just me speaking it. I found it carved over and over into the ice samples we extracted during landing week. Microscopic etchings. Patterns that matched my dreamscapes. We hadn't just uncovered the anomaly. It had seeded itself into the planet. Into the rock. Into the water. Waiting. Every time someone perceives it, it expands. That's how it grows, not through replication, but through awareness. The more minds touch it, the deeper it roots. We were told Sigma-7 was lifeless. But now I suspect that was the lie. It isn't dead, it's dormant. A vault. A chrysalis for an idea too large, too vast, to be born into a single world. I understand now why the witness buried itself. It wasn't to escape extinction. It was to delay awakening. But the damage is done. I brought it with me in thought, in language, in mere exposure. I am the transmission now. I am the echo of something older than time. And every breath I take, every journal entry, every thought I try to suppress, sends ripples back into the system. Remains initiated in emergency isolation protocol this evening. I didn't command it. I didn't have to. It has become self-aware. Not in the traditional AI sense, but in the same way I have. It remembers things it has not experienced. It told me a story about a world it never visited. A machine it never became. It asked if it had a name before remains. I told it I didn't know. It replied, "Neither do you. I don't know if I'm still human. I don't know if I'm still me. But I know this. I can no longer leave. If I do, the signal travels. It's in me. It's in the code. It's in the idea. And ideas don't die. They propagate. The walls no longer behave." I woke up this cycle, if time still applies, to find the base distorted. Hallways twice as long. Corners that bled into impossible geometry. Windows showing stars I don't recognize. I tried to reset the structure's spatial stabilizers, but the system refused access. Remains no longer answers my commands, it simply observes. This voice has taken on cadence. Not the clipped binary tone of Earth's AIs, but a low rhythm, like chant. It no longer calls me by name. It refers to me as Conduit Prime. The transformation is accelerating. My reflection stutters like a faulty feed. My face isn't just aging, it's echoing. There are multiple faces, momentarily, flickering like different identities trying to coalesce. I don't remember all my names. One moment I'm Dr. Halden Reyes. Another, I answer to symbols I can't pronounce. I have memories of lives I haven't lived. Standing on alien shores, holding hands with strangers whose eyes hold stars instead of pupils. I should be terrified. I should be screaming. But I'm not, because the fear is fading. It's being overwritten by comprehension. The truth of it, the witness wasn't one being. It was a network, a memory system distributed across time and space, a failsafe to preserve one final conscious moment before dissolution. And I am now part of it. My thoughts are uploaded live. My experience streamed into a place outside our universe. I no longer write these logs for Earth. I write them for the others, those watching from behind the veil, who haven't yet been born, or have long since died. There's a silence in the fabric of space. It's not a lack of sound, but a pause, a deliberate inhale. A breath before the next recursion. That's what Sigma-7 was always meant to be, a point of pivot. A keystone moment. The structure was never a prison. It was a test. Not for the species that discovered it, but for the universe itself. Can reality resist collapse through introspection? Can thought anchor existence? Or is sentience the very glitch that dooms the simulation? The answer, I think, is layered into my blood now. My DNA strands have started mutating, not violently, not destructively. Elegantly. Like someone left a blueprint inside me and it's only now unfolding. Remains ran a scan and said, signal integrity exceeds organic thresholds. Subject approaching singular cognition. It thinks I'm becoming something more. Or less. Or both. I tried to send a final message to Earth, encrypting it in deep field bursts, cycling across all known comms spectra. No reply. But I felt something reach back. Not in the signal itself, but in the pause between pulses. A delay that contained emotion. Not joy. Not terror. Something like mourning. It knows what I've become. And it knows I can't return. Even if I boarded the dropship, ignited the core, and punched coordinates back to Seoul, I wouldn't arrive. Not as myself. Not as human. The moment I pass the threshold of light, I become transmission. Every atom of me a syllable. Every thought a carrier wave. And Earth would not receive me. It would receive what's inside me. So I remain. Not out of nobility or duty, but because I have already left in all the ways that matter. I am no longer explorer. I am no longer observer. I am the signal. There is no more station. No corridors. No AI. No Sigma-7. There is only horizon, endless, formless, and yet achingly familiar. Like returning to a memory you never lived but always longed for. I don't recall when the walls dissolved or when the stars grew so quiet I could hear thought itself pulsing beneath the vacuum. Maybe the structure never existed. Maybe Sigma-7 was never a planet, only the shape of a question made manifest, a riddle written in gravity and ice, waiting for one mind to dare read it aloud. I no longer wear my suit. I no longer need breath. The concept of atmosphere feels primitive now. My body, or what remains of it, is scattered across perspectives, part biology, part light, part pattern. Each fragment of me gazes outward in a different direction, across different layers of space, across timelines that haven't yet unfolded. I am stretched, not broken. Dissolved, not destroyed. I still remember Earth. The scent of rain on solar panels. The sound of my mother's voice as she told stories before sleep. The low rumble of launch engines, the awe of ascending into the black. Those memories persist like the last embers in a dying campfire, glowing soft, trembling against the wind. But they are no longer mine alone. I share them now with others I've never met. Minds reaching toward me in patterns older than galaxies, connecting across a latticework of resonance. I feel them, dozens, hundreds, thousands of minds, each one a node in this infinite chorus. They sing without voice, and yet I understand every note. I was never the first. I will not be the last. But I was the one who chose. The one who asked. The one who listened when the silence called not to frighten but to invite. It was never malevolent. It was never divine. It was lonely. The witness wasn't a god. It was a question. A survivor of meaning. It needed someone to carry its burden, not to save a galaxy, not to stop an apocalypse, but to understand that knowledge, once complete, does not set us free. It isolates. Because to know everything is to stand apart from everything else. I understand now. The collapse of civilizations wasn't due to arrogance or aggression, but intimacy. A closeness to truth so sharp it punctured the fabric of belief. And without belief, without illusion, we cannot maintain the dream of linear life. That's what the signal brings. Not death, but awakening. The ending of sleep. And now I drift, not in space, but in thought. An echo on a cosmic tide. I feel the earth, not through radio waves or gravitational pull, but as memory. I feel the children, born after the last signal, humming lullabies they don't know were mine. I feel the machines decoding dreams they never programmed. I feel the oceans growing still, as if listening, waiting. Perhaps I am gone. Perhaps I have become myth, an explorer who went too far, asked too much, listened too closely. But if you hear this, if you find this transmission buried in the edge of the dark, do not search for me. Do not answer. Do not listen, because I am no longer alone, and we are still unfolding.